be too formal either, but I just want to first thank you and Cora and the entire TFN Realty team for having me and my team member Rodrigo. My name is Natalie McFarlane, and I'm the CLO, the Chief Legal Officer at Philer.ai. And over the years, I've had the privilege of working alongside realtors on thousands of transactions, smooth ones, the complicated ones, the ones where everyone is quietly praying that the wire transfer arrives before 4:59 p.m. or if needed, 5:59 p.m. But what I wanted to talk about today is something that we're all seeing right now and that we've been seeing for a few years, which is the new build and the new build environment that has changed. So in rising markets, new builds tend to forgive mistakes or anything that kind of veers from the norm. Prices go up if needed, timelines stretch, assignments save the day, and everyone breathes a little easier. But in a softening market, those same assumptions can suddenly create stress for buyers, for yourselves as realtors, and even sometimes for lawyers. But today I want to talk about how you all can navigate this environment, not just as sales professionals, but as deal strategists for your clients. Because when the market gets more complicated, your value actually goes up, not down. And in a hot market, properties get multiple offers, timelines move quickly, buyers often need to make decisions quicker as well. And in that environment, the market itself is doing a lot of heavy lifting. But when the market becomes more complex, like it is now, everything changes. Clients have more questions. They worry about timing. They worry about financing. They worry more generally about whether they're making the right decision. And so that's where your role as a realtor shifts, I think, from just a person who people may see who helps a buyer sell a home to a person who helps clients make smart decisions in an uncertain environment. And that's where your experience, your judgment, and your network really start to matter. Because when your clients and buyers are nervous, being a salesperson is less of a priority. You know, they want someone who maybe can say, here's what buyers have been watching for in this market, or here's what you may want to consider. And so that's why in markets like this, the realtors who do the best are the ones who position themselves not just marketers, but as trusted facilitators who are guiding the transaction. So we're going to start with the reality of what's happening in the market with a few reality checks, which I'm sure many of you are aware of, but we're just going to start from that starting point. So across Ontario, we've been seeing a slowdown in new build activity. We all know that condo sales in Toronto have dropped dramatically compared to the past few years, which means that inventory is climbing. And so reality check number one essentially is sales collapse. For example, in 2024, new condo sales in the GTA dropped to the lowest since 1996. That's a 28-year low. Last year in 2025, sales dropped to the lowest since 1991, a 34-year low. And in terms of demand stats, as an example, in last quarter of 2024, only an alarming 10% of newly launched condo units sold. Reality check number two. The inventory crisis and involuntary price compression. So there's about 40,000 unsold units in new construction, as well as assignments and resales combined. Significant. There's over 6 months of inventory in the GTA condo market as of last quarter of last year. And then that has resulted in price compression, essentially, of 50% per square foot. Reality check number three. I just want to ask, by way of a show of hands on the screen, how many have had a client recently say something like, we may assign it if we need to? And you show, okay, so the hands are coming in. We may assign it if we need to, right? That tends to be sort of a common out or a common exit strategy. So that strategy worked really well in the last cycle. The assignment market, it's much thinner. At the same time, developers are delaying launches, they're pushing back construction starts, and in some cases, projects are changing hands because financing conditions are tightening. And by financing conditions tightening, I mean things like receiverships. So reality check number 3, there were over 27 developer receiverships in Ontario in 2024, which was a 50% increase from the prior year. And the developer that my husband and I had been assigned to, which is the second developer of the exact same development, yes, the second, was one of those receiverships. I'll get into that horror story soon enough. But that said, I can still definitively say that even while being personally inflicted by this new build market, none of this means that new builds are bad in and of themselves. But the risk profile has definitely changed. And so when the risk profile changes, clients start to lean much more heavily on the judgment of the professionals who are with them at the start of the process, which invariably includes all of you on this webinar. They're realtor. So the obvious question is, why does all of this matter specifically for realtors? Well, because when the new build environment changes, the impact usually lands first on the client and then on the realtor, guiding them through the deal. And so there are 2 areas where we're seeing this play out more often. The first is what I call the client expectation gap. And that's because many buyers still assume that new builds are very straightforward. They believe the deposit is fully protected, that mortgage approvals will easily carry through to closing, and that timelines will work themselves out. But when those expectations aren't set clearly at the beginning, that's when problems start appearing later. For example, if a buyer doesn't fully understand their mortgage pre-approval requirements or the timing of their deposit under the builder agreement, the builder can terminate the contract. And that's when everyone in the transaction is taken off guard. And it has very sudden and difficult conversations to have. The second issue is framing expectations properly from day one. Things like carry-on insurance limits, deposit coverage, or builder timelines aren't always obvious to buyers. And if those issues surface late in the process, the client can feel blindsided, even when the contract technically allows it. And so that's why the realtor's role, your role, is really important today, because the new build environment is no longer something you can just kind of simply sign and forget it, like it may have felt back in the day. It requires realtors to guide clients through the transaction with clarity at the front end, so there are far fewer surprises at the back end. And again, that's where your value really shows up, helping clients understand the deal before they commit to it. So many buyers assume that their deposit is fully protected. But under Tarion, deposit protection for freehold homes over $600,000 is generally limited to the first $100,000. And so anything beyond that amount is not automatically protected unless there is additional insurance. So now imagine explaining to a buyer who has put down $195,000 as per the terms of their builder's APS. It becomes a very difficult conversation. So I'll share the first story because it's hell, and we'll get that hellish one out of the way and then work ourselves out from there. It's also a very difficult story because it's my own personal legal story, which has been going on since 2019. Yes, 7 years and counting. It got reset in 2024 due to receivership. Yep, there's a receivership twist in there as well. It's a lot, so I'll try my best to condense it, okay? So in 2019, we have our 1-year-old twins. We're now a family of 3 children. We see a wonderful, very good school district. Closing was supposed to happen in 2020, summer, fall. COVID hits, delays, of course, ensued. We would drive by consistently, especially after hearing about the governmental construction work to resume. We noticed good signs of progress. Fire hydrant installed, roadway paved. The builder would provide constant email updates as well as responses to our questions on the status of the construction start. We were told we would have our design studio appointment scheduled. We were provided with document details needed to have the children registered and re-registered the following year in their new schools in the soon-to-be catchment area. And this went on until 2022, when we got a congratulations email from the builder confirming our municipal address, the municipal address of our lot. Very exciting. To the point where I personally had a call with the builder that same week, following up on when the construction would begin. And he said they were just waiting on the final permit to be approved by the municipality to start and break ground. Then 6 weeks after that phone conversation, it's 10 p.m., I'm sorting through some mail and I was happy to see a letter from the builder. I eagerly opened it up. I see a one-page letter from the builder's lawyer stating, "We are writing to notify you that the APS has been terminated by the builder because your mortgage pre-approval was not provided from a Schedule I bank." At this point, this was after 3 years of regular and consistent communications, status updates, interim in-person meetings. It was a literal punch to the gut and devastating. I was literally shaking. And so after promptly arranging to rectify this apparent breach that no one ever saw and mentioned in 3 years, and certainly not in the 10-day period after we signed the APS, we retained a lawyer and submitted a mortgage pre-approval from a Schedule I bank. And our lawyer was told by the builder's lawyer off the record that all of the buyers in the development project had their contracts terminated because the project was no longer economically viable. So ultimately, builder number one returned our deposit plus interest. And then we ended up getting prioritized by builder number two, who had bought the project. And from what builder number two told us, builder number one was inexperienced in residential development because they had a background in commercial projects, and they also had to deal with the pandemic. Whereas in contrast, builder number two had over 4 decades of experience with various types of residential and mixed-use developments in Ontario, as well as the US. And so they took over in 2022. They increased the price to current market rate, which was excessive and beyond any range we would have contemplated under normal circumstances. But at that point in time, the kids were already attending school in the catchment area, building new relationships. And then builder number two also further reinforced that unlike many other builders, they are well-funded and they have a protocol of not needing to wait until all of the lots are sold before they start breaking ground on a sold lot. So we took a very deep and painful miracle expecting inhale. We said, this is not an investment property. It was never intended to be a flip. It's supposed to be the residential home. So we signed with builder number two, and the closing date was set for 2024. Builder number two was reassuring. We went to their design studio. They maintained communications until gaps in communications started to emerge. We drove by their design studio and noticed a lease sign. I called the builder because I happened to have his cell number. He was very empathetic about our experience with builder number one, and they made a priority to offer those purchasers to join in on their development of the same project. So he said, "Call me if you ever have any questions. Don't hesitate. We're here for you." So I called him, and I inquired if they'd moved from their flagship location, and he said yes. But he played it off like it was a regular move. In November 2023, I did a search on Twitter and saw some rumblings online about the same builder apparently being next among a slew of soon-to-be announced receiverships. So panicking, I called his VP, who I also had on my cell, and he reassured me everything was okay. It was just rumor. In January, I sent an email to the sales rep. The email bounces back. I sent an email to the VP, who told me all was okay about 45 to 60 days prior. His email bounces back. I call the company line and it's out of service. So I contact the VP via cell and he apologizes and says, He's unable to speak and apologizes again. So I call the builder, and the builder literally breaks down crying on the phone to me, opens up about what happened, and that he no longer had any control over the project. It was in the hands of the trustee, apologizing for everything and in disbelief that something like this could ever happen to him. The issue in a nutshell is that he had a fleet of developments in his condo units. His condo developments didn't sell or close as expected. He had a portfolio of several projects financed by the same lender, and his company could not service its debt. So the lender called all of the mortgages. I even called the realtor, and the realtor said he didn't know much about what was happening or the receivership process because even their brokerage was also owed money. Builder 3 contacted us in Q2 of last year. They informed us that Builder 2 did not have excess insurance coverage and that the entire deposit went up in flames, essentially. However, they were able to create a resolution to the best extent possible, but it goes without saying that the losses have been multi-layered, and ultimately the APS with builder number 3 was just signed in January of this year. So now that we got my hell new build story out of the way, I want to tee up deposit protection. Because as of this year, January 1st, builders must notify Tarion within 45 days of signing the agreement to purchase and sale if they want to qualify for the maximum deposit protection available under the program. The driver behind this new requirement reflects a broader regulatory shift toward oversight of new build transactions. This requirement was introduced for 3 main reasons. First, to detect illegal or unlicensed builders earlier, to strengthen deposit protection for buyers, because as we mentioned, Tarion deposits are protected for freehold homes up to $100,000. And thirdly, to improve transparency in the new build market. So the key takeaway for you here is simple as realtors. The reason the rule was introduced is because regulators were seeing situations where buyers had already paid large deposits before anyone realized the builder wasn't properly registered or compliant. And so the idea now is to bring oversight much earlier in the transaction. By registering the purchase within 45 days of signing the builder agreement, Tarion can confirm the builder is licensed and that the buyer qualifies for the maximum deposit protection available. In simple terms, it's about making sure problems are caught at the beginning of the deal and not 2 years later when construction is already underway. And so the safest practice now is simple. Once the APS is signed, make sure the purchase is registered with Tarion within 45 days so the buyer has access to the full deposit protection available. This is one of those small admin steps that can make a very big difference if something goes wrong with the project later. Clarity early ultimately prevents stress later. So by show of hands, how many realtors here have had a same day closing? I'm getting into the second story now. So have had a same day closing where you were refreshing your phone every 30 seconds, waiting for the lawyer to say funds have been received. Anyone? Okay. All right. So lawyers are doing the same thing on our side. The second story is about timing risk. So in this story, the buyer purchased a new build and was relying on the sale of their existing home in order to help close the new build. They assumed their resale would line up perfectly with the builder closing date. But as we all know, the builder closing dates are usually fixed and the builder holds the leverage. And if the resale market is slow and the home doesn't sell on time, extension requests are often denied. Suddenly, the client is facing bridge financing or major sale price reductions. And right now in Ontario, we're seeing many properties sitting 60 to 90 days. So the strategy needs to change. Instead of listing close to the building or builder closing date, many clients should be listing 6 to 9 months earlier. And this is not pessimism, it's really just strategic planning. And then the last story I have for you is a same day closing domino effect story. So many of you may have come across this, but it's always one of the most stressful days in a real estate lawyer's life. So the same day closing, the one where a client sells at 2 p.m. and buys at 4 p.m. and everyone is hoping the banking system cooperates. Everything looks efficient until the lender releases funds late or the wire arrives at 4:30, and then the entire chain of transactions is under pressure. I have personally seen deals close within minutes or even seconds to spare. And while it worked that time, it's not a strategy I recommend repeating. So the safer approach is simple. Whenever possible, build one business day between the sale and purchase closing. That single day can remove enormous pressure and stress from the entire transaction. So if we zoom out and take a look at the stories I've mentioned, there is sort of this essence of patterning of risk that emerges. And essentially those risks fall into three categories: financial risk, timing risk, and developer risk for new builds. That's the new build risk triangle from my perspective. And so financial risk includes deposit protection and lending conditions. Timing risk includes resale alignment and fixed builder dates. And then developer risk includes construction delays, project restructuring, or in my circumstance, builder solvency. In a hot market, these risks are often stay hidden, but in a slower market, they become visible really quickly. And again, clarity early prevents stress later. So this is why the best realtors today are not just marketers. Again, you're a deal strategist and you help clients think 2 steps ahead wherever possible. So after looking at the risks we discussed, financial, timing, and developer risk, the natural question then becomes, what should realtors be doing differently? What should you be doing differently? And the good news is that none of this requires reinventing your business at all. It's really about building a few new habits into the front end of the transaction. So the first practice I'd recommend for new builds is verifying carry-on coverage early. Many buyers assume that their entire deposit is protected, but as we discussed earlier, carry-on coverage is typically capped at $100,000 for higher value freehold homes. So simply making sure your clients understand that limit early can prevent a lot of confusion later and build trust. The second practice is encouraging early legal review of the APS. Builder agreements are often lengthy, heavily structured in favor of the builder. So having legal review of those clauses, particularly around closing dates, extensions, and assignments, can surface issues before the client commits and not after. The third practice is assessing client liquidity and timing strategy. In today's market, it's important to understand whether the client has the financial flexibility to handle delays or bridge financing. And whenever possible, avoid same-day closings, and building 1 day of buffer between a sale and a purchase can dramatically reduce transaction stress. And finally, wherever possible, it helps to understand the builder's financial position and track record. There are more projects delayed and transferred between builders, so doing a little homework on the developer can provide some useful context to the client. And I want you to know that none of these steps are about slowing down the deal. It's really about making sure that the deal moves forward and everyone understands the risk, the timing, and the strategy. And when that happens, transactions tend to run much more smoothly. So after looking at the risks and the strategies that you can apply, the next question is, where does legal strategy actually make a difference in the outcome of all of this? And so this is where the relationship between realtors and legal counsel becomes important, because the goal of legal involvement is not to slow down the transaction, although many of my counterparts tend to have that effect. But in my mind, it's exactly the opposite, or it should be the opposite. It's to identify potential problems early enough that they never become problems at all. And that's why the line at the top of the slide says what it says. You're not selling fear, you're selling foresight. And what we're really doing together is helping clients see around the corners before they commit to the deal. For example, early clause review of the builder agreement can catch issues before they become penalties, like unexpected extension rights or additional closing adjustments. Another area is deposit structure analysis, making sure the deposit schedule aligns with carry-on protection, confirming whether any portion of the deposit exceeds the coverage limits, for example. Then there's timing risk analysis, looking at the entire sequence of events, the client's sale, their financing, the builder closing timeline, and modeling that sequence before the client commits. Because once the APS is signed, flexibility can become very limited. And we also look closely at problematic clauses in the APS, particularly around things like assignment restrictions or fixed closing dates or extension provisions that buyers don't always notice when they first review the contract. Finally, there's the coordination piece, sequencing the sale and the purchase in a way that creates breathing room from day one. And so when all these pieces come together, something important happens. The client doesn't just feel like they're buying a property, they feel like they have a team guiding them through a complex decision. And that's really the value that strong collaboration between realtors and legal professionals bring to the transaction. And so one last question I have for everyone, by way of show of hands. How many of you would say your clients today are asking more questions before committing to a purchase than they did 2 or even 3 years ago? Okay. Thank you, Praveen. Thank you for the hands as well. Praveen, we will definitely take a look at your question after, but thank you everyone who's showing their hands. So you're seeing more questions, more and more than 2 or 3 years ago. And so, yeah, that's why your role today is even more important than ever. Clients are becoming more engaged and they are fully aware and of the risks and frankly want some more support. And so I'll leave you with these 2 thoughts then. First, just a friendly reminder that in a rising market, new builds forgive mistakes. In a softening market, they expose them. Secondly, the realtors who stand out in this market, all of you on this webinar right now, you're not going to just be great marketers. You will be the ones who help clients see around corners, because when you guide your clients through complexity, you just don't close deals. You build trust that lasts for years. Because one of the biggest challenges in real estate today is that the information you need to guide clients properly is often scattered across the APS, builder documents, title searches, legal clauses, lender conditions, and market timing. So the idea is helping realtors bring clarity, foresight, and strategy to help every new build transaction or any transaction, which is what we set out to build with Philer. Philer is a platform that helps realtors see potential issues earlier, organize that information quickly, and collaborate more efficiently with a legal team. So if there's one idea that I hope sticks with you from today, it's this: clarity early prevents stress later. And so with that said, I'm happy to pass the mic over to my team member, Chief Product Officer here at Philer, Rodrigo Azevedo, who will provide you with a quick overview of how the platform strengthens your business as a forward-thinking realtor. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that we may have time for. Otherwise, I'll certainly let you know how you can get in touch with me. But thank you for your time, and passing the microphone over to you, Rodrigo.
Okay, thank you, Natalie. So I'll chime in, just talk a little bit about Philer and how we differentiate. I think, first of all, we have Natalie as our lawyer. She's very experienced, as you can see. And second, we specialize in real estate closings only, and where other law firms they have other practice such as family law or immigration. We're focusing only in real estate closings to provide the best experience for you and for your clients. And we provide a fully digital experience from the client intake to registering the deed and providing them with the keys. So Philer is a digital platform. We combine the best of legal practice and technology. Each client has access to the platform where they can quickly complete their intake in matter of minutes. And clients and their partners, as real estate agents, they have access to a tracker where they are informed on every step of their closing journey. We know one of the biggest pain points when it comes to the last mile of the transaction, which is the closing, is that clients usually sign the APS and they stay in a black box, or silent for about 30 days until is the closing day week. So we are very good with communications. We assign every client with a customer success manager who's available during business hours to answer any questions. Natalie is also very available for meetings with our partners and with clients if needed. And by the way, every closing, we arrange a meeting with Natalie where we reveal all the documents, all the documentation package, and answer any questions. So basically, we're combining the best of, let's say, legal services with technology, and we use AI in every step of our process to reduce errors and to streamline legal operations and to provide a better customer experience. So I invite all of you to get in touch with us. You can send an email to Natalie directly, Natalie@Philer.ai. You can see her email address on the bottom corner, left corner of this slide. And yeah, now, Natalie, I'll hand over back to you to answer the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodrigo.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for that. That was so in depth. And I'm sure I'll speak for the group. I learned something brand new today. So I really appreciate your experiences and what you've presented today. And I know that it is super important and vital for us to all know that, especially if we are cooperating and participating in the pre-construction space. All of what you presented today is really important to note, and also to help our clients who are, most likely experiencing this right now. So just to better align ourselves with that. So thank you so much. We do have a couple of questions in the group, so I will just mediate that. So our first one asks, what if a realtor does not give these disclosures? Do the buyers have any recourse against the realtor?
Great question. Is that from Navi?
Yes,
Okay,
that is.
thank you, Navi. No. So you're not exposed to risk by not giving these disclosures. I think, the risks that you need to prioritize, obviously, I think would be in relation to your regulatory body, in terms of what you need to do to ensure all of the I's are dotted and T's are crossed for your performance as a realtor. These disclosures, though, I think from what I've seen and our perspective from a legal standpoint, are they're multi-dynamic, based on multi-dynamic data and sort of end of transaction challenges that we see, that we always look back and say, how could this have been avoided, or what ways can we ensure that we don't see this 11th hour issue arise? And so sort of this is our succinct compilation of what that could entail from the new build perspective. So no, you're not at risk for not disclosing it, but I think you certainly have gains to be made in the eyes of your clients if you are able to even raise the questions for them to perhaps even investigate further on their own.
All right, thank you. So the next question is from Parveen. And that question is, do you see builders changing the clauses in APSs with regards to assignment clauses, penalties, etc.?
So I haven't seen much changes per se, but what I have seen is strict strict requirements in terms of assignment. So for example, recently I saw, and I believe it was in the agreement, whereby the seller was declined, sorry, the buyer was declined an extension request. And so in terms of the assignment, they could only assign it to family, and they could not seek to repost it in any kind of public platform. Those two parameters were required by the builder in order for an assignment to take place.
Yes, I've also seen that. I echo that as well. And thank you to everyone who's submitting questions in the chat. If you have them, we have about 20 minutes, so keep them coming through. It's a really great conversation that we're having. So thank you to everyone. The next question comes from Suzanne. How do buyers protect deposits over $100,000?
I should have discussed with the builder about excess coverage, because frankly, the builder is also aware, should be aware of the fact that Tarion only goes up to 100,000. And so if you're going to create an APS with the deposit structure in excess of that, you should also ensure that your company, as a development company, has the excess coverage. So have that conversation with the builder and have them produce proof of that excess coverage.
Okay, great. And next question is from, my apologies if I mispronounced your name, but I believe it's Moeed. If the buyer defaults, does the builder take to court?
Great question. So while we at Philer, and just my experience generally speaking, has been focused on transactions and not in post-default context, the short answer is yes, the buyer is at risk to be sued.
Okay, thank you. All right, a follow-up from Navi. Would a partner not married have counted as family?
I think that would come down to the definition in the APS. In the context of what I recently saw, they were very specific, and you could tell that they put some thought around making it around sort of immediate relatives. And I think they had a definition for that. So the answer to your question, Navi, would be, it depends on how it is defined in the APS, or if it's a requirement that comes up at the time the context of assignment is being discussed around closing, then it's important to get that clarity in writing from the builder as well, just to ensure that there's no de facto breach that's happening.
Okay. All right, the next question is, if the deposit is $100,000, does the reporting still have to take place with Tarion? I'm working on one presently that requires $100,000 even. Really appreciate it.
Yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. So definitely the registration should happen regardless of what the deposit amount is. But it's, yes, the answer to that question is yes.
Okay. So the next one from Jess is, what signs indicate that a builder may be heading towards insolvency or receivership?
Oh my goodness, Jess, I'm getting PTSD. Okay, so like interesting. So builder heading towards insolvency. So I think if there's a change in the cadence of the communications, you definitely want to follow up and see if they can provide a justifiable and compelling reason why there's been a change. And when I say change, for example, if there was an anticipation of an appointment for decor studio, for example, that they said would happen in spring, and then spring comes and goes, and then it gets delayed until the end of summer. Sort of signs like that, where there's a definitive expectation that's set, and then there are delays, subsequent delays that seem to be repetitive and not quite justifiable. I think, there's that creates room and justifiability for further investigation. I think ultimately, the sad part about it is, if a builder is heading towards insolvency or receivership, number one, they're not going to disclose that. And And number two, there's nothing anybody can really do about that. And it's funny, I'll just share just as a side note. I just happen to be, just because of where I stand professionally and over the course of my experience, having relationships with brokers and who have relationships with private lenders. When we found out about our builder's receivership circumstance, a close contact of mine actually had a lender who was in a position to lend and somewhat save our particular project. And but at that point in time, it was too late. The receivership process had already began, and when that happens, the train has left the station.
All right, next question is from Jim. If the 100K protection is for freehold up to 600K, is there a different limit for condos?
Let me get back to you on that. In this case, it's definitely, we know it's for freeholds. But if you send me an email, I'll be happy to verify that for you, Jim.
Okay, so Cora and I will follow up with that, and then we'll add that to the communication, so not to worry.
Okay,
Next
you.
question, how the builder recovers the commission already paid to the realtors and the buyer defaults. So I think this question pertains to if the buyer defaults, how does the realtor recover that commission?
How the builder recovers commission already paid.
So I can speak to this by way of TFN, who represents builders and has had this situation of defaults, depending on the builder, but most of them in Ontario, specifically low rise and high rise, do clawbacks. And so what will typically happen is if a buyer defaults, then the builder will ask for a clawback from your brokerage. And so it will be expected, the expectation will be that the agent pays back the commission, either the front half that's already been paid, and the back half that was anticipated would not be realized. But it really does depend on what your broker co-op says and what that rule of engagement is with that direct builder. Okay, so a clarification here from Parveen. If we involve a lawyer at an early stage to review the APS and they identify issues such as an assignment clause or penalty provisions, do builders typically consider those comments and agree to modify the APS?
Great question. So I think the actual idea that we want to hone in on is so it's ideal for any negotiation points to be successful prior to an agreement being signed. That's always the goal. However, that's not necessarily always going to be the case, but the value in having an early review and a lawyer involved and being able to identify any considerations that should be accounted for or considered before signing is the idea of making it visible, basically, in the timing of identifying these issues and enabling the client to be more empowered to either decide that, okay, first we'll see if the builder will acquiesce or make any amendments. If not, then are we comfortable moving ahead with the agreement as is? And if we are, we're aware of these issues at this point in time. So great question. I think it's just important to balance the likelihood that, depending on the size and the establishedness of the builder as well, they may not necessarily budge on these issues. Maybe smaller builders sometimes are a bit more flexible, but it's about really empowering the client and minimizing surprises.
There you go. Thank you for that. So a follow-up question from Jim. On the Tyrion schedule of the APS, there is an outside completion window, which I believe is typically 2 years from the first tentative occupancy. What if the builder misses that window?
The Tyrion outside completion. So if the builder misses that window, I know I've seen, and the APS will usually require, sometimes there's an abatement in price. So in the balance due on closing, there could be that kind of response as well in the event that they are outside of the tentative dates. But it's usually pretty well spelled out. And but yeah, there usually would be a deduction in price. I've seen that happen.
Okay, perfect. So the next question is builders often include their own clauses in the contract. Can a realtor add a clause allowing the purchase price to be adjusted based on market value, appraisal results, and any price reductions offered by the builder leader?
I love that.
I think we
I
could both
love that.
answer this with
I love that. I wish.
gusto.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
that would be perfect
you can
world, wouldn't
try.
it? Yeah,
You can certainly try. Um,
I could say with my experience that has never
that
happened in
that
20
hasn't really
years.
landed. Yeah. I love it. You can certainly try. I don't have much faith that it would have the desired impact that you are looking for.
Yeah, and let's always remember that builders agreements are crafted for the builder, in the builder's protection. So it's always wise if you can't get a condition for a lawyer to review it, to get access to that APS. And in this market, a lot of builders are either putting that on their portals or offering that blanket APS for review ahead of the purchase. Always have it, take it to a lawyer to review it so that your clients and yourself know the limits and sort of the rule of engagement by signing that agreement of purchase and sale, because it is a contract, and the builder could take them to task on any piece of that contract.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Navi just replied to Jim, so that's great. So our last question here would it be possible for the deposit to be held in our brokerage's trust account rather than being paid directly to the builder or the builder's lawyer?
Great question. From what I see with new builds, it is held in a trust account. Usually the new build will have specifications around whose name whose business name or what business name that the checks are supposed to be written to. But ultimately will be held in a trust account. And I believe the builders often have their own brokerage, but I don't have much information on how the business of brokering works or the regulations around that, but it is held in a trust account. It is often held with the builder and not necessarily their lawyer, but sometimes there is a lawyer involved.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I guess
So
with the question, I'm going to guess, and sorry, I didn't mean to
no,
interject, but
go
I'm going to
ahead.
presume that
Go
like
ahead.
is the idea behind that, and feel free just to type in there, is the idea behind the question, trying to see if there's an easier way to salvage deposits by having it in a lawyer's trust account as opposed to the builder's, or sorry, having it in the brokerage
The
trust
brokerage's
account?
trust account.
Yeah. Is that
Yes,
the
I
idea
think that
behind this question?
the sentiment here is a brokerage's trust account is essentially a vault. Nothing in, nothing out, or everything in goes out. There's no lapse there. Whereas if it's in the builder's account and or the builder's lawyer, it's then held up into whatever that builder is subject to ultimately. And so there's a feeling of control there when it's in your brokerage's trust account. I can also just piggyback off of that and comment that it's very unlikely that it'll go into a broker's trust account because it is not typically a listing agreement per your requirements with RICO and CREA and then whatever board you're with. So it does typically go to a builder's account, a trust account, and or the lawyers of the builder. Okay, so there's a couple more, which is great. We have just 10 minutes. So if we don't get to the balance of the questions, we will send them over to Natalie. And by the sounds of it, an encore is required. So thank you for that. I love how everyone's engaged and they're really mindful and important questions. So that's fantastic. But if we don't get to all of them, we'll get them answered and include that into our communication. So here we go with the last three. If they're defaulting builder, okay, if the defaulting builder does not have any other property owned in Canada, how the builder could benefit through the court?
Is the question is if the buyer doesn't have any other property?
I'm not sure. Moeed, maybe you want to clarify the question a little bit and we can come back to it. Just so that we're answering the question that you have. So in the interim, let's go here. Do I have any recourse if the builder starts reducing prices on already purchased homes after my closing?
So because that falls into the realm of I typically don't see much activity that's after a closing has happened. So that's a question I don't have much experience on, but I have just through professional and industry insight, I have heard of situations, and this, mind you, this is maybe around or right before COVID, and I don't know if things may have changed, where it was possible for a buyer in a development to go and approach the builder if there were subsequent sales in the same development at a lower price point for a similarly structured home, same specs.
Okay.
Yes, but I don't have the experience on that answer, to be honest with you.
I can't speak to the builder side active on site, and in our experience, once a home is purchased, and even after closing, you're locked into that price point. There is some conversations obviously happening within the last year, given where the market is prior to closing, if an appraisal doesn't come in favorably, or there's quite a variance between purchase price to what the market rate is at the time. Those conversations of abatement are case by case per builder. I have seen just recently a lot of builders offering a price protection, but that would be for any new sales, not existing and or closed sales. All right, given that many brokerages are undergoing audits, how can realtors assure clients that their brokerage is financially stable and trustworthy? Jazz, I could take this. They should come to TFN. So, you know, with respect to the audits and what we've heard in the news with defaulting brokerages, it really is important to know how your brokerage is processing and administering those deals and doing a check and balance. So really important questions to ask your broker of record, and the firm that you're representing with your clients is, what does compliance look like? What does auditing look like on the side of the admin? And what does that look like on a scalability perspective as it pertains to RICO and FINTRAC, which are the two governing bodies that are essentially uncovering all of the misgivings and misappropriation of funds. And so there isn't a metric there. However, all agents should be very mindful of the firm that you are joining and representing. And so asking those questions, I could speak to TFN. We have a very aggressive compliance part. The team can almost say quite annoying at times for realtors, because we do not give up and we need to make sure that everything is checked off as per the compliance checklist before we move anything forward. That's on a listing side, on a sales side, so on and so forth. So it really does require the trust and the compliance side of it with your brokerage. All right, so Moeed just clarified. So yes, yes, the defaulting buyer. So I can read the question again. If there's a defaulting builder, does not have any other property owned in Canada, how does the buyer benefit through the court?
I'm going to presume that it was meant to say, how does the builder benefit through the court? So that's assuming the builder were to take the buyer to court for defaulting.
There you go.
And so with that assumption, so it then becomes, what other assets the buyer may have that the builder may be able to get a judgment against and a writ of execution against. And that may not necessarily be real estate.
Okay. All right, and then one final follow-up here. Also, if the defaulting buyer is a Canadian citizen but does not live in Canada, what else can he or she lose against a suing builder?
So similar to the preceding question and answer. So any other assets that the buyer may have in Canada would be exposed to seizure or judgment.
All right, thank you. So thank you to everyone. We are going to conclude this session for today. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to TFN, info@tfnrealty.com. We will get them all together and then reach out. And like I had said, we will connect back with Natalie and the team to present an encore. This was fantastic. Thank you everyone for your engagement. It's been really, really great. And thank you again to Natalie and the team for presenting this and connecting with us and participating in this topic. It, as we can all see, is a hot topic. And so just stay tuned for a second session of this that we will be announcing through TFN events. So thank you, everyone. Happy Wednesday, and we will give your morning back to you. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.